to have this guru here, Bill Korman. I met Bill about a year ago, and we have many of the same mutual contacts. We're part of a phenomenal group of entrepreneurs, and we hit it off well. And I said even then that I'd love to connect with him, learn more about him. And although it took some time because he's very, very busy, I am too, he is changing the world with what he does. And he has a powerful story behind it. And so, Bill, welcome to the Power Transformation Podcast.
Hey, Lisa, thank you so much. And it's an honor and privilege to be here with you today. I couldn't wait for this. I know when we first talked, when we met at the speakers mastermind, I'm like, you said, I have a podcast I'd love for you to be on. And, you and I to talk. I said, okay, so it's taken us a little while, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. And everything happens at the right time. And we are going to learn about how you actually have gotten to this space and place of where you are. And when I say you are a guru, you are a master and a beast when it comes to finances and more. And we'll talk about that. But first, I'd like to start with a nice icebreaker, lighthearted question. And Bill, something about you is you love world travel. You have that traveling spirit. You enjoy traveling. So your question is, out of all of the places in the world you've traveled to, which one would you say hands down has been one of your favorites, like in the top three?
Out of the top three, I would say number one would be Greece.
Oh,
Number two is Aruba, because we go back there all the time. We love the people and the environment. It's a place to just go relax and chill. Doesn't cost a lot of money. And so I would say that. And then number three for me would be Italy. So I would say Greece, Aruba, and Italy.
wow. Now, what is it about Greece? I know a lot of people who have traveled to Greece. I have yet to go. I need to go because I have a Greek name. I have a Greek first
Yeah,
name.
I
But
know.
but what is it about Greece that you absolutely love?
Well, I mean, so if you study scripture, right? So,
Mhm.
the beginning of a lot of, foundation of the world, and, the foundations of, different things, love, the love journey,
Mhm.
spirituality, the artistic, foundations of the world, all kind of centered around that area around Greece, and the things that happened. I love history. So we got to go to many different ruins and the different museums there. My wife and I, Kimberly, to just explore and learn. The amazing things we have today. A lot of them are from Roman times, Greek, ancient Greece, ancient Rome times, that things were developed that we don't realize we have today came from ideas way back then. So, and obviously the food was amazing, the people were amazing. So, again, I love to travel and study history and learn. One of the things that I've realized over the years is that you can go figure it all out on your own, or you can stand on the shoulders of giants, right? So the choice is yours.
Yeah, that's true. And standing on shoulders of giants will take you far. And when you open yourself just to different possibilities in life, and then getting to expand your horizons and who you are as a person, that actually takes you beyond where you could imagine. And in terms of that expansion as a person, Bill, if someone were to ask you straight up this question, how would you respond? Who is Bill Corman?
Mm. So number one, I'm the son of the ultimate highest creator. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm an influencer. I am a kingdom builder. And so my walk and purpose in life took me a long time to realize this, but is a kingdom builder. And my role that God's anointed me and laid on my heart is to go out and impact the world, and bless millions of people. And I'm sure we'll get into it. There's so many different things that God has been truly blessed and brought into my life and my family's life, to be able to walk in my purpose. For years, I was walking in my own journey, and I was this, and then things worked out. I thank God. If it didn't work out, I also thanked him for the lesson. Now I seek him first, and ask his guidance and wisdom, so I don't run around like a knucklehead. So.
That's right. That's right. And I really appreciate you saying that. And for listeners and viewers who might not be Christians, keep in mind that This isn't something that those of us who are followers of Christ only put on Sundays. Christianity is a lifestyle for us. And when he talks about kingdom builders, it's how are we using those gifts and talents and just the anointing God has put on our lives to make this world a better place and to shine Christ's light through us. And it's so much more. And Bill does that through what he does in the world of finance, speaking, writing, and so much more. And so, Bill, if you could just briefly, in less than 60 seconds, share with us what it is you do professionally, and then after that, I'm going to kind of ask some questions that take us back to how you got there. So, what is it that you do? How do you serve people through your profession?
So yeah, we own several companies now. So I was in the military for 20 years. I worked for the federal government for a while in different, facets. Started on a part-time basis, a financial services company that grew to a national platform, and within the next, year and a half, 2 years, will be international. And that was spawned out of the fact that I went through a disaster. I thought I was doing everything right, went through a bankruptcy, and got curious going through the bankruptcy about what is it the wealthy people do that didn't go
Mhm.
through this or haven't gone through these mistakes. What do they do different with money? So that got started, and along the journey formed a technology company with a business partner. I also own a real estate investment company with my older son. I have a consulting company that we started because once the book came out, the 168 game, everybody was reaching out to me, say, hey, can you work with me? Can you coach me? Do you have a program? And so we created that for that. And then just recently purchased with a business partner into radio stations in Canada and here in Baltimore, Maryland. So just got involved in that just recently in the last couple of months. And we have a nonprofit called Their Voice Global Warriors, which is committed to end human trafficking once and for all forever. And so
Wow.
it keeps us full. The schedule's full. We don't say busy, as I talk about in the book, the 168 game. But through those different entities, God has spoke to me and is guiding my path. That each of those different companies serve a different purpose and a different communities in the country and around the world. And the thing that I was sort of most excited about is the launching our nonprofit, which launched officially in September. So that is something that's been on my heart for almost 30 years, that I wanted to put an end to that. And I asked God for the alignment, the discernment, and the connections and all the things to do that. So that's what Bill Korman does today through those different entities. So.
Indeed. And that may sound like a lot, but when your passion and your heart are in it, and when you've been called to do such work, it just becomes second nature to you. And the lessons you've learned over the years. And let's go back some, Bill, to your early origins. What is so amazing to me and just quite honorable, you are a first generation in terms of being from America and this country. So tell us a bit about your family background and how their influence has led you to be passionate about helping people specifically with their finances.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've come from very humble beginnings. Of first generation born in America. My dad, my grandparents, all immigrants. On my dad's side, they came here. Actually, they escaped through the underground during the Holocaust. Escaped. Their Holocaust survivors came here to the United States with the clothes on their back. They lived in the ghettos in New York City, putting little pennies together and, working, different odd menial jobs to put some money together. They moved to New Jersey to a farm and then eventually bought the farm, started building multiple businesses. And I watched them through insane love for God and insane work ethic,
Mhm.
build stuff, amazing stuff from scratch and being influenced on other people's. And I wanted to honor that. I wanted to model that. That's why I was called to serve in the military because, my grandfather, my grandmother loved this country. It was a big mistake to be around my grandfather. He had monster hands and he was a scrapper. If you said something bad about America in front of him, you probably should just take off running. I learned, from that. My dad served in the military, in the Army. My stepdad retired from the Army, after 20 years of service. So I had that example to follow. And I followed both of them into the military. I was in the Navy for 20 years, loved it. It was an absolute blast time of my life. I learned a lot about leadership and discipline and things like that. And, esprit de corps, love for the country. And through that, experiences, of watching, what they sacrificed through, I said, you know what, I don't have issues, right? If I think back to what my grandparents went through, what my dad went through, my older aunt that came here, she passed away, not too long after they came to the United States. And my other
Oh,
uncle, my youngest uncle, was actually born here in the United States. But I just watched them and learned from their story the struggle they went through, and I said, I gotta do my part, right? For
mhm,
to honor that, for the Korman family name, the sacrifices they made. And so that was, yeah, I've been truly blessed to have that as an example.
mhm,
On my mom's side, they worked hard too, but they were all professionals. The philosophy on their side of the family is go to school, get a good education, get a good job, right? My mom thought the ultimate success was being a doctor. We have
yeah.
tons of doctors, attorneys in our family, actually on both sides. But one of the things that resonated with me on my grandparents on my dad's side was entrepreneurship, right? And the power that you could do so much more for your community because of access to connections and resources that an entrepreneur you could do in a job. And so I tried both. And so that's why today we've been truly blessed to have multiple companies, be a serial entrepreneur, and be able to have the impact that we do today because of that. And again, I don't put anything down. If somebody wants to go to school, get a good educated, good job, but just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, right? And
Mhm,
and that you understand, what is it, your journey. And the cool thing about America, you get to try a couple of things. You don't have to get it
mm,
right the first time. So again, that's one of the things that I talk with people about all the time. I coach young entrepreneurs through the process of the idea becoming it, what it takes, the discipline, the grit, the vision you need to have, the discipline. And so, not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur, but I think everybody should at least try it, at least
mhm,
one attempt, and and decide if it's something for you. So that experience I had growing up of, go to school, get a good education, good job, hard work ethic,
mhm.
entrepreneurship helped to mold me into, what we do today, for my wife and I, and all the companies that we have.
And I like what you said, Bill, about everybody should try it because some people automatically cancel out the thought of entrepreneurship without even trying it. And they may actually be cut out for it, but haven't had the guidance or even that, insight to actually do that. So, in terms of you, how do you transform, Bill, from this Navy vet into an entrepreneur in terms of owning your own business? What was that spark that said, this is what I want to do post Navy life?
So while I was in the Navy, I decided to test. Actually, when I first went into the Navy, I started my first business I was 22 years old, 21,
Oh,
22.
wow.
I
Uh-huh.
got a partnership with a gentleman. We started a gym together. I was competing in powerlifting nationally. I'm like, well, I always want to own
Mm,
my own gym. So we had a partnership. That worked out okay, but I learned that that kind of partnership, you have to be careful who you go in business with. So it didn't work out long term, but I got a lot of experience. And what happens for most entrepreneurs is once you get bitten by the entrepreneurial bug, it's very hard to go back to. And I
you're
did. I
right.
mean, I did. I was a 20-year Navy career. I worked for the government, but
Yep.
we always had something on the side. I did consulting. I started,
Hmm.
we got involved with network marketing companies. We built a massive business there in multiple countries. And so what I've been able to experience is that there are ways to get involved in entrepreneurship without, they say, giving up the farm, right? So there's certain ways you can test out and if entrepreneurship is for you without having to borrow a ton of money or go into debt and all those kind of things to do it. A lot of people think entrepreneurship, you got to fully quit your job and go all in. Well, some areas and some industries, yes, that's true. Sometimes you buy a franchise, they actually make you, quit your job and go full time to
Hmm.
run the franchise. But what I've counseled entrepreneurs for years is the fact that if you have a thought and idea, the worst thing in life to do is come to the end of your life and have a life of regrets. So my decision that I made. It's like, I don't want it. I met some older gentlemen that I took care of at the VA when I was doing my VA rotation while I was going through Navy, and I would hear their stories about serving the military and incredible things they did. But they also told me about this life of regrets, about I should have done this, I should have tried that, and it
Hmm.
hit me. It hit me to my core. I'm like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be in my 70s, 80s, and 90s and telling my grandkids, my great grandkids, this list of regrets of things that they should go do because I never tried that. And I said, I just
Mhm.
don't want to do that. So, what do I got to lose? I mean, if I try some things, it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, what I tell entrepreneurs all the time is that, listen, if you try things out and it doesn't work, failure is data, right? It's data. You study the data, you realize, okay, that didn't work. What can I do differently next time to make it work? So that's been my experience.
And when you talk about failure being data, take us to a moment where you use that failure as data in order to make certain that you excelled beyond that prior failure. For example, when you talked about you went into business with someone that didn't work out for the long term, I'm sure there are other lessons that you learned in that because that helps shape us. That shows resiliency, it shows transformation, and so much more. So, with you, what is one of the biggest data points you had when it came to failure, and how did it actually enhance who you are now?
Great question. I think the one that stands out the most to me in my life, and I wrote about it in the book, and I
Mhm.
came very vulnerable in the book, and exposing that is that in the end of 2008, I went through a very painful bankruptcy. I thought I was doing everything right. I was in the military. I heard from all the successful people, you got to get involved in real estate, right? Real estate's where it's at. You got to
Uh-huh.
add it to your portfolio. So we bought homes that where we lived, and the military transferred us. We turned those into rentals. Then we got involved in real estate investment type stuff, REITs. And then the recession happened and everything literally imploded. And again, I thought I was doing everything right. I tried to keep things. I was robbing Peter to pay Paul. But that painful experience of going through that bankruptcy, feeling like a failure as a husband, as a father, as a provider, the day that I went through bankruptcy court in Baltimore, Maryland, I remember that, like it's yesterday. I actually keep a copy in my main office, a copy of my bankruptcy papers on my desk because it reminds me always of why I'm on this journey, right? And never get too full of myself, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a good check. But going through that, I realized that, as I had a 3 hour conversation, bawling my eyes out with God in a parking garage in Baltimore, Maryland, while it was pouring down rain. It was raining all the way up to the walking uphill three blocks to the bankruptcy court, back down again, soaking
Wow.
wet, looked like a drenched rat. But I had this conversation with God. I said, "What is going on? I thought I was doing everything right. I was told to invest in real estate. I was doing this. We were employing people. We were doing all this stuff." And God said, "This is just the beginning." So it was a
Mhm.
painful lesson I had to go through. It was that failure, that thing that I went through that got me curious. Because the day before I went to banks court, a buddy of mine called me and says, "Hey, I want to pray for you. Is that okay?" So we prayed together, and he said,
Mhm.
"Hey, I just read an article that Warren Buffett's only lost 3% of his wealth in the recession. Didn't think anything about it.
Wow.
Go through bankruptcy court. On that way home after a conversation with God, I stopped by Barnes and Noble and I bought every book that the lady was helping we could find it where it mentioned Warren Buffett. I'm like, all right, this is a disaster, but I'm going to figure this thing out. I want to know what Warren Buffett's doing or what people like him do that the rest of us don't know about money. And
Mhm.
that was how I turned that disaster, that failure into instead of shame, which is what the enemy tries us to keep us under that thumb of shame. I got
Yeah.
curious. I started asking questions like, okay, if Warren Buffett can do it, right, and these other billionaires can do it, what is it that we don't understand? What is not being taught to all of us hardworking middle class America that we need to know? It's like playing if you go to play a game of football, right,
Mhm.
and they take you onto the team and you sit on the sidelines, and one day the coach taps you and you have to go in. You don't know the rules of the game and you don't have the equipment to protect you. It just says go in. That's what
Yeah.
happens to most of us in life, right? We grow up, our parents don't understand the money game, right? Schools don't teach the money game. And then we work our tails off, we get degrees, we work hard, and then we're in the world. We're supposed to be playing this money game, but nobody's taught us how to play the game. How do you win a game if you don't know the rules? So
That's right.
that was how I turned that disaster, or at the time I thought it was a failure, but it was actually a teaching lesson, was data, into something extremely positive. And now we've been truly blessed to teach tens of thousands of people the money game today.
Wow, that is incredible. And the um irony of it is you go through this bankruptcy. So people will see you like he knows the ins and outs of finance. And it is so amazing how so many financial experts that I know of, even personally, many of you have a similar story about almost in a sense hitting rock bottom when it comes to your finance, but rebuilding and surpassing and exceeding where you ever were in life once you came out of that. And it's often been due to the fact of you researching, asking questions of people who have made it and figuring out what they did and then implementing it. So, what sparked that passion in you, Bill, to say, now that I am changing my life, now that I have pivoted and I'm going to come back stronger than ever? You could have kept it to yourself, but what caused you to say, I want to now truly help others do this? Did you see the need for it? Was it something personal that struck you and said, I've got to help people? What caused that to happen?
I remember a story my dad told me about my grandparents getting screwed over by a cousin of ours who was managing their finances. Not once, not twice, but three times. All
Oh,
that hard work he put their money aggressively working in the market, even though they were in their later years and it should have been more conservative. And they lost millions. And I remember hearing that, didn't think of anything about it, but I was a kid. But as I went through that bankruptcy and started to think about money and finance all the time, I was reminded of that story. I was reminded of the millions and millions of people, middle class America, that had suffered through the recession, right, of
mhm.
08, 09, and people losing their homes and families out on the streets, and the even horrible things of suicides and things like that came of just the fact that we're just not taught this game, right? There's this money is a game. It has no religion, has no politics. It's just a tool, and we're not taught how to go get this tool, and how to use it. We're just taught just go work hard, and then fill it. And what I realized is this interesting thing. This is how most of us determine how we're doing about money. We get up in the morning, right? We get ready for work. We get our coffee together. We walk out the door. We look to the left and the right. We say, two kids, two cars, a lot of debt, me too, off to work I go. And that's how most of us, we're not doing any real worse or any much better than most of the people in our neighborhood. So I guess we're doing
Mhm.
okay. We would like to do better, but we just don't know how. So we went from having no information, where all the wealthy held all of the keys to the kingdom and they didn't teach it to anybody. Now we have this plethora of information. Now it's the other side. Who do you trust, right? What is the right thing for me? If all these so-called gurus online and things like that, which one should I follow? We hear about
Yeah.
these main stream financial houses like Schwab, Morgan Stanley, Edward Jones, T. Rowe Price, USA First, all these companies, and we say you got to ask yourself the question: if they actually knew what they were talking about, right? If those strategies really, really worked, then why is it that middle class America is suffering the way they are? Why is it that so few people are able to retire at the level that they want? Maybe it's because the things that they're telling us to do as the so-called experts is not exactly right. Maybe there's some pieces to the puzzle that they either don't know, and they're not telling us because they don't know, because they've been taught a certain way, or maybe there are some other pieces of the puzzle that we have part of the puzzle put together, but there's pieces we're missing, and that's why we're not hitting the goals that we want. We're not able. I mean, whoever said retirement should be age 65? The
Mhm.
government created that with Social Security. Retirement is a byproduct of money. It has nothing to do with age.
Mhm.
But so many of us in middle class America have been ingrained or even brainwashed to think that I'm working my whole life to this magic age of 62, 65, 70 to retire. Why? Retirement is a byproduct of money, has nothing to
Yeah.
do with age. So that's what we teach, in Built for Life Financial Agency. We teach our clients that we give them all the pieces. We teach them the rules, all the rules of the game. We expose them to 5 to 7 non-correlated investments that the wealthiest people in the world, like Carl Icahn, Ray Dalio, Warren Buffett, Tony Robbins has written in 3 of his books about the importance of that. We teach middle class America what that means, what it means to us in middle class America. We break it down Barney style for them to understand it. And that's
Mhm.
why we've had so much success of not only people wanting to work with us, but referring everybody they know to us, because we make it simple. We invest in it. Our goal is for every one of our clients to feel like they're our only client, and that we explain and we answer and we challenge them to be curious. We don't expect them to believe us. We challenge them to be curious. We're going to give you some information. Go do your own research, because here's what we also found: man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So our goal in our
Mm.
agency is to educate. We're an education firm. We want to give you all the information distilled down so you understand it, so you can partner with us and make decisions about you and your family that are important to you and your family. It's not a one size fits all. A lot of these financial institutions, and I even call them out because I taught this program for years, the Dave Ramsey's of the world, the Susie Ormans of the world. It's not a one size fits all. Every single family has different goals and dreams, desires, and their financial walk needs to be customized to their financial walk, their goals and dreams. So that's one of the things that we've been insanely passionate about in our company, all of our agents, about making sure that that's how we work with clients. We address their concerns, and we teach and we educate them. And again, that's that. From going through the disaster that I went through, I want to help as many middle-class families that are out there busting their tail every day not to have to go through that. So,
Wow. You said a lot there, and I was listening intently because my mind started thinking about a person who may hear this and say, Bill, that's great and all, but this so-called American dream nowadays with this economy in the past 4 or 5 years, even into the present, there's so much, in my opinion, this is just my personal perspective. I hear so many fear tactics now in the media. Um, People who, yes, we acknowledge how the economy is, but what I don't think people understand, there's been ups and downs throughout history. And people who get caught up thinking that, you know, it's a certain president's fault, or it's a certain this's fault, or oh my goodness, it's just so much fear and terror and this doom and gloom atmosphere that I've seen happen, like I said, within the last 4 or 5 years, but more importantly, up till now. And this is not a political podcast or anything like that, so I don't want to get into that. But what I'm trying to say is, Bill, how do you coach or guide a person, or even somebody who's curious about you but says, well, I want to earn more wealth, or I want to do X, Y, and Z, but there's no way you can do it in this economy. How do you counter that?
yeah, so you're right. And again, it's referred to in our industry as fear porn. And it's been consuming a lot of people, right? I mean, the addiction to the fear over and over again. And again, you're right. It has nothing to do, what has a lot to do with politics, but money has
Yeah,
nothing to do with politics, right? When I used to do in-person seminars, I lay $100 bill down and say, okay, you're in the room, you're probably on left, right, center, different religions. I said, here's $100 bill. Show me on this $100 bill where it has a political party or a religion. It doesn't. It's just money, right? So
that's right.
I said, so let's get real about the fact. Let's put all that stuff aside and let's get real about how money really works, right? What is it? What's the rules behind the game and all that kind of stuff? And you're right. There's a lot of fear out there. And what we realized, and again, not to be political or anything, we realized over the last several years that fear allows you to control a population, right? Look back
Yes,
what
sir.
happened with COVID, right? Look what's
Hmm.
happening in the last 4 years, even today, about money. Oh, this is going to happen. Tariffs going to do this, all this kind of stuff. Well, here's the reality. I ask people all the time when I'm doing my now virtual webinars, and still we do some in person. I'll ask them this question. I said, well, as they say, oh, taxes are horrible. I said, well, what's the highest tax rate right now? Right? 30 some percent, right? When I said, well, what's the highest tax rate in US history? And they tell me right now, like it's the highest it's ever been. And I was like, nope.
No,
I said, what if I told you it was 94%? What if you only got to keep 6%? That the wealthiest people in America at the time only got to keep 6% of what they made. Right. And I said, what if I told you in 1913, when taxes were originally created, we were lied to? We were told that it was going to be temporary. It would never be higher than 7%. It was 2 to 7. And once all the war debt was paid off, it would go away. Well, guess what? It's still here today. So again, it's really understanding history and understanding how money works allows you to distill the noise, right? It allows you to shut down the noise of all the fear that's out there, about that. Because again, depending on who you follow. And so we went from literally the wealthy people controlling population because they had the books, right? They didn't teach people to read. Then we learned how to read, right? And then we're like, oh, okay, now it opens up new doors. Same thing with money principles. The wealthy kept all the keys to the kingdom. Now we have social media and YouTube, all this kind of stuff. We have YouTube University and all these places you can learn about it. Now the question is, who do you trust, right? Which one's
Yeah.
right for me? So what we do consistently is when people come to us, oh, I heard this, or I saw this, or I watched this. I said, okay, let's process it. Let's have a conversation around it. I said, what do you think is the angle behind that pitch, whether it's from the left or the right? Don't you think there's some kind of angle that they're trying to get at, that they want to control the narrative? I said, but at the end of the day, who's responsible for your money? Is it the government? Is it the president or you? Nobody cares more about your money than you. And what if
That's
I
right.
told you nobody's really coming to save you? Right? The government could put all the programs in the world they want to, and we've seen how much they've failed at a lot of programs they put in on both sides over the years. But I said, if you understand that nobody's coming to save you, and we can agree on that, then we can start to help you. Because now we can give you things to read and watch and look at that you can start to understand this money game. And now the decisions are being made by you along with us to guide your family in the way that you want to go. So, again, like that question about taxes, that blows people's mind. I mean, I think the largest one I ever did was a couple thousand people, and not a single one, some lady from the back of the room yelled out 94%. Like
Wow.
all the way in the back of the room. I said, oh, please shine a light on her.
Incredible.
She nailed it. And, it was crazy. It was like the air went out of the room. They didn't think that our government actually created a tax rate of 94%. So again, it's about understanding. All we're focused on is helping people shut down the noise and ask him, instead of being fearful, be curious, right? The
Mhm.
opposite of fear is curiosity. When you're curious in anything, but curious about your faith, curious about, your family history, curious about money, curious about how can your relationships get better,
Mhm.
things change, right? Because now you go on a discovery, right? Instead of listening to someone, like, for example, what do we have by the time we leave home? We have a combination of what we've been exposed to by our parents. But that's just one view of life. That's two people's view that we've been under their roof and their guidance for 18 years, 19, whatever. And then you go out into the real world and you meet new people or different people, and you say, wait a minute, that doesn't align with what I was taught. Let me get curious. Let me ask some questions. Let me say, hey, tell me about your life and you growing up.
Yeah.
So I love what you're doing with your podcast, like bringing diverse voices on and asking,
Mhm.
thought leader questions about, tell me about this, tell me about that, so that your audience, which is growing immensely, the audience gets to experience different views, right? Because that's what
Exactly.
makes us strong, is the fact that
Mhm.
we're curious and they understand that there's not a one size fits all. There's people from beautiful human beings all over this planet that have different views, philosophies, and all this stuff. We're all part of one human race.
That's right. Yes, we are. And, you know, everything you've said is so loaded today. And even the title of my show, the Power Transformation Podcast, is so intentional because everybody goes through something transformative. And we often have the power within ourselves to make the changes in our lives and in the world around us. And my parents are in their 70s. And I think it's so beautiful that even now with everything going on, you know, I'm giving them facts about certain things like, hey, I know that you come from that, era where when they were growing up, news was transparent. I mean, they told me during the Vietnam conflict, they actually saw soldiers die on camera on the news and nothing was censored or everything. But I told them, I said, media is different now. And I said, it's not the same media you had growing up in the 60s, 70s. And so I even try to keep them calm and I present facts about certain things happening to say, yes, be aware, but be very discerning and avoid getting caught up in all of this fear and scare. And I've seen, on a more personal note, since you and I are of the same faith, I've seen so many fearful Christians that contradict the word and how we're even supposed to live. And I'm not saying not to be aware, but to trust God above everything. And so God even instilled in you, Bill, to say, I want you to just not coach, consult, help, guide, speak, but also write. The 168 game. And I'm not ashamed to admit I read a lot, but I got a lot of books in backlog. I have not read yours yet. But temporary, give us a not temporary, but a tiny snippet of the reason behind the title and what inspired you to write the book and what do you want readers to get out of it?
Thank you. So the book came as a love project of years of disasters, and mistakes and stuff. Coming out of the bankruptcy, I was looking over in the passenger seat, and there sat my Franklin planner with everything highlighted, broken down, time blocking. I had read probably about 10 or 15 books at that point on time management,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized, I said, wait a minute. If there's all this stuff works, then why do I feel like I'm out of control every day? Why do I feel like I'm always chasing something and I'm running out of time before I run out of things to do? And how do I figure out what to say yes to and what to say no to, right? Because there are things that tug at our heartstrings, right? The things our spouses ask to do, the things that our kids are involved in, the things the schools or the church send home that they're asking for. I said, how do you decide what you do, what you don't do, and all that stuff? And so
Mm-hmm.
one of my mentors in the Amway business had talked to people about managing their time through the thing called this 168 strategy. And
Okay.
so I liked it. I started using it. I actually had that highlight and blocked out my Franklin planner. But I said, even with that, there's something missing, because of all these if time management actually worked, then why are so many people stressed out, overworked, overwhelmed? If you could actually, time management, the philosophy of that actually worked with all these gurus out there, all these books and apps and tools. So I said, there's something different. So I prayed about it, and then God said, it's the 168 game, right? There's a gamesmanship to this thing there. And then what he spoke to me was time ownership. And I kept saying, I'm driving down the road, right? I'm coming back from the bankruptcy. And I said, what is it I'm missing? And he said, time ownership. I had no idea what that meant. And then it took me many, many years from God, hearing that word from God, to kind of understand it. And here's what I found out through the research and the test, and, obviously writing the book and helping thousands of people even before I wrote the book, is that time ownership is this simple. If you and I own a restaurant, right, and we hire the best manager in the world, that manager may even be an entrepreneur. They may even think, but at the end of the day, they'll never see that restaurant the way you and I do. Why? We're the owners, right?
That's right.
So if you take that same philosophy to time, if you're a time manager, that means you're not the owner. You're managing it. You're managing your time. Well, how do you mind shift from being a time manager to time owner? And we break that down in the book, and it's just as simple. Time management starts in the middle. It's assuming you have a litmus test, a guidepost for making decisions. It assumes you already have sat down and identified your morals, values, and principles, because those MVPs are your guideposts of what you say yes and no to, what you get involved in, what you turn down, how you so-called manage that schedule. If you start back at the beginning and identify what are your morals, values, and principles, guess what happens? Now you can become a time owner versus a time manager. That starts in the middle with a Franklin planner, an app, or a calendar, and you're making decisions without, again, the rules to the game. If you're going to be a time and master time, we call in the book, level 3 of the game is called a time ownership master. So there's time, there's a time ownership apprentice, time ownership journeyman, and then a master, right? Level the game. It takes about 9 to 12 months to become the master and win the game. Some people do it sooner. But if you're going to do that, you have to understand that you can actually control time. Most of us feel out of control every day. So we've seen people write to us that their anxiety is gone, right, completely or diminished. Their depression, the frustrations, this overwhelming burden they feel because they've learned to become a time owner versus a time manager. And it's literally as simple as getting clear on your MVPs and then using the tools we teach you to execute from the litmus test of, that decision-making process of MVPs to what you do with your calendar, with your family, with everything you do in your life every single day. If you do that consistently over again, you literally take back control. And so that's really what the book's about and then we have fun with it. We turn it
Yeah.
into a game so you can enjoy the journey, right? The journey should be enjoyed, of learning how to take back control of your life should be enjoyed. So that's the 168 game.
Wow. How can we get it? How can we support this? How can we get it? Where can we buy it? Tell us all that. And more importantly, although you are based in Maryland, is it safe to assume that some of your clients are virtual as well?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we coach
Okay.
people all around the world that people hit up. So if you go to the 168game.com, to the website, not only can you get the book there, it'll link you to Amazon or any other platforms it's available on. The Kindle there and the paperbacks there. I just went with Dr. Andrea Adams Miller into the studio, and we just got the final rounds of editing. So the audiobook will be out in a couple of weeks. And so we'll make an announcement. Those are on our waiting list. We have an app coming out in September. So there's an app that goes on the book. So if you buy the book or you get it on Kindle, there's a QR code in the back of it. Scan it. You'll go onto our readers waiting list, and we'll notify you as soon as the app's out, as soon as the audiobook's out. But the 168game.com not only has, tools and resources, a bunch of free stuff that we couldn't, well, we didn't want to put in the book because the book would have been 400 pages, but we put a ton of resources and tools for you, free resources on the website. There's also a way to connect with me for one-on-one coaching. And then eventually we're working on training the 168 game coaches so that you can connect with them on the app, or you can hire them, or then obviously you can also, reach out to me. It'll be my honor and true blessing to be able to work with you one-on-one and help you with these breakthroughs. Because when you learn to control time, all these things, right? The fear and the overwhelmingness and the feel like, plates are spinning and they're crashing. We've heard from hundreds and hundreds of women, probably thousands, like at least now, how trying to be all things to all people, right? To their family, their kids, their job, their spouse and all that stuff. Walking through the 168 game has been transformational for them because they realize that they can actually do those things they're called to, and not have to have fear or worries about it because they're in control, right? They're a time ownership master. So again, that warms my heart to when I read those reviews and people reach out to us about what the 168 game book is doing for them in their lives, because that's why I wrote it. My agents over the years, like, you got to write a book. You got to write. My mentors, you got to get this out of your head. Stop teaching it one-on-one. Write a book so you can it can impact other people. So we're truly blessed to have it out there. The app coming out and the audiobook. We held off an audiobook for a year specifically because there's things at the end of each chapter we want you to do. There's little things we want you to do to go on the journey as you move through it. So what we start out the beginning audiobook is my challenge is that you agree as you're going to listen to the audiobook that you're going to go back and do those exercises at the end of each chapter. And then the other cool thing we did in the audiobook is Dr. Andrea interviewed me at the end of each chapter. So there's content and questions and real life scenarios that we couldn't put into the book that are now in the audiobook. So we hope everybody enjoys that, and it has the impact that we believe it will for each and every one of you.
I will let you know, because while I do read hard copy books, the way that my brain processes, I'm an audiobook person. So I have an Audible account. I have something like I have so many books that I listen to and read, but I have 3 credits that I need. And we're recording this July 31st. So August 1st, I'm going to get another credit. So I definitely, when it's an audiobook, I'm going to get that. And for a more personal question, since I'm getting the audiobook, would you recommend any of us getting the audiobook to also, if not immediately, but eventually also get the hard copy book, since you
Yes.
do have activities for us?
Yeah, and then again, I mean, the book is very reasonably priced, so it's not about sales. It's about transformation. We
Yeah.
want you to embrace the power of the 168 game. So because we love more than nothing more. Nothing mean more to me. Money doesn't mean anything to me. It's the fact to me, the ultimate thing outside of my relationship with my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and my family, nothing more powerful to me than somebody come up to me and say, you changed my life. You had an impact in my life. You helped me with a breakthrough. And that's what we want with the book, is that for it to do those things for you. And so we recommend that and this is why most of the books you see behind me, that's only a fraction. I mean, I've read
Mhm.
thousands of books, and another 1,000 audiobooks. But
Mhm.
for me personally, the way I learn the best is if it's a book that a ton of people are recommending and reviews, I get the paperback of the hard copy, I get the Audible, I put my headset on a 1.5 speed, and I'm going through the book so I can pause and highlight. Because my goal with every book is you're never going to remember all of it. My goal with every book is to get 1 or 2 or 3 nuggets that I can implement. Right. So that's
Right.
my prayer to each and every person that gets the 168 game, that you go through the process, the journey, that you take away, if nothing else, the fact that we want you to sit down with some private time and identify, get very clear on what are your morals, values, and principles, not the ones your parents had, not what your spouse has or your partner, but what are your morals, values, and principles, because that will be your compass for the rest, moving forward, the rest of your life, that you make those decisions through.
That's right. Wow, Bill, this has been such a rich conversation. And for a closing question, just thinking about everything that you've done in your life, tell me, how has your family, in terms of your wife and your children, how do they keep you inspired and going every day to not just do the work necessarily, but how do they inspire you to leave your lasting imprint in this world?
So one of the things that we determined years ago is I asked the kids, I said, we didn't have, some families have a family crest. And I said, look,
Mhm.
obviously the family went through the Holocaust and all that stuff. So, and, we didn't get passed down the Korman family crest. So I said, I like to create that. And then we decided to say, okay, the letters Korman, Korman, what should those stand for? If we're going to establish it with us as the foundation for generations to come of the Korman family, what should those letters stand for? What does the Korman family represent? So we came up with those. That was a cool journey together. And it reminded me that my responsibility is to create a legacy, right? As a kingdom builder, my responsibility is to bless as many people while I'm here on earth, but that my journey here on earth should then still be blessing people after I'm gone. And that's the way I can do that is through my children. And now I have a beautiful granddaughter, just turned 1 year old, Paisley Joe. She
Mhm.
warms my heart and is the next level of inspiration, because God gives me a blessing to be here to see multiple generations. My commitment is to impact some knowledge and wisdom, some tools in them, so that they can use that to carry on long after I'm gone. And so that's our commitment. The Korman family is that we believe, this is us personally, it's the greatest last name, on the planet, because of what God's called us to for impact. All 4 of my children are truly blessed in talents and gifts in their own walk, and they're all on their own journey. And so for me, I'm reminded every single day that my responsibility as a kingdom builder is to impact the world and leave a legacy. So that's my commitment. That's what gets me up every single day, and I ask God, what's the next? Okay. Once I accomplish something, I'm like, okay, what's next? What do you have in your heart for me? What do I need to hear from you today? As I'm in prayer every single day, on my knees, I ask God this question. What is it you need? What is it you need me to hear today? Because for years I walked around, and like I said, this was my walk. When this is, I tell my kids this, and they laugh about it, and I tell it on different interviews. My relation with God was like this, and luckily I changed it. He would try to get my attention. He'd drop a pebble on my head, and I'd scratch my head, and I go, "Ooh, that hurt a little bit." And then he'd try to get my attention again. He'd drop a brick, right? Something to wake me up. And I go, ooh, that hurt. And it would hurt for a couple hours, but it would go away because I have a big, thick head. Then he would drop a piano on my head, right? So the bankruptcy was a piano, right? Some of the other things that happened in my life, he dropped the piano. I said, you know what? That hurts a lot. I don't want those to happen anymore. So how about I just go see God and say, hey, what do you want me to do? And then let's go do it together. So that's been it. And that's part of my walk with him, and part of building the legacy for the Korman family, and, all the things that we do that impacts the world and the community around us. That's our commitment as a Korman family, and my responsibility, as the head and leader of that, until God calls me home.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Power Transformation Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow or subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. It helps us inspire even more listeners. And don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who could use a little power in their transformation. Until next time, keep bouncing back, keep rising, and and be good to yourself and to others.